He never thought he'd work so hard to ensure a boring life. This is A Boring Life by Mikkel Snyder. As I was saying, he never thought he'd work so hard to ensure a boring life. His story, much like many Midwestern tales, starts with a confluence, although his is not the merging of the Missouri and Mississippi rivers, but of a union between the Pacific and Atlantic. He is the child of a pediatrician born in the Philippines who moved to the U.S. in search of a better life, and a submarine captain with vague European roots who was born in New Jersey and raised in Texas. He spent his childhood bouncing from coast to coast, born in California and raised in Hawaii, South Carolina, Washington State, Virginia, and Maryland, while his parents kept extraordinarily busy no matter which side of the country they were on. And he, thinking he wanted a similar level of excitement himself, set his sights on the West Coast when it came time to look for colleges, not realizing he'd find himself stuck in the Missouri mud. For you see, if I am anything, I am indeed a confluence. And in Missouri, I found Washington University and a biomedical engineering program that was the idealization of my birthright. What better way to honor my mother and father than finding this cross-section of their fields of study? So, I set my sights on the Gateway West. Quickly, though, I discovered that I was not particularly apt at biology or chemistry and ended up in the much more abstract realm of systems engineering. But that broad-based knowledge did manage to uncover yet another narrow intersection between my familial legacies. Healthcare software. So, in the pursuit of excitement, of new horizons, and of dynamicism, a week after graduation, I packed everything I owned into a 2011 Mercury Mariner and drove to Madison, Wisconsin, and started to learn how to support healthcare software. And crucially, I learned how utterly awful I was at supporting healthcare software. IT is already stressful enough when non-functioning software inconveniences someone, but it is infinitely more so when non-functioning software prevents you from saving another human being's life. My days were treacherous and unpredictable. A constant cacophony of phone calls, meeting after meeting about how I had missed one deadline or 12, and coming into the office before the sun rose and leaving long after it was set. One week would be almost manageable, and then the next, I'd be paged at 3 a.m. because someone deleted 10,000 files by accident in a production environment. And mind you, I had been at the job for all of 6 months. It got to the point where my manager sat me down.
You are one of the most intelligent people that I have met, and you are entirely awful at this job.
Oof! Her candor hit me like a bag of bricks. But it was the first time I actually asked myself if I wanted any of this. I had been so used to perpetual motion, bouncing back and forth, parents who always seemed to be constantly on. I barely listened as she described the whole performance improvement plan, but I was already thinking about how I longed for the first place I ever chose to call home. And I wanted to call it home again. And then, I got incredibly lucky. Almost immediately, I found a job posting for a technical writing position that I was questionably qualified for, and I applied on a whim.
Could you come in for an in-person interview?
Of course.
Oh, good. So you can be here in St. Louis this Thursday?
And I, looking for any excuse not to be in the frigid north, said, sure. A short trek later, I walked into my now office and met my now manager. How was the drive? Oh, not bad for 6 hours. And it was here that I discovered my now boss was not aware that I hadn't been local at the time. He showed me a copy of my resume that he had on file, and where I expected to see the letterhead, I saw my hiring agencies. Never the one to squander such a confluence of comedic circumstances, I instead went to plead my case. What my resume doesn't show you is that I am a fast learner, and I want to learn this. Well, I drove back to Madison on Friday, and I got the job offer on Monday. And I was back in St. Louis barely a year after I left. But now, I had a new outlook. I wanted roots. I wanted consistency and stability and focus. And this job, this city, felt like he could give it to me. 11 years and counting later, I finally made my own confluence in a city I have come to adore even more, blending my love of language, technology, and teaching. And while I recognize that it is overly dramatic when I declare I have no intention of leaving and I'm going to die here, I have realized I know no other way to impart how much I have come to value that certainty. After 2 decades of ephemerality and 1 year of constant barrages of asks and tasks, it is a blessing that I get to do the same thing every day. And this blessing has led to me finding community. Adopting 2 cats. And feeling centered in a way that I never thought that I could. I think when people hear the word boring, they hear uneventful, monotonous, dull, stale. But when I say boring, I mean a gloriously predictable cadence. I mean stable. I mean that I get to choose when to upset the status quo. I mean that there is, in fact, a status quo. I mean that I do not need to rely on luck to find myself fortunate. I mean that I do not need to chase some imagined excitement from not knowing what will happen next. I mean that I can dig my roots in the confluence of my own design. And I will not take that for granted.